Hi everyone! This video tutorial is going to talk about learning paths in Smile and Learn. Learning paths is basically a group of specific content that teachers can assign their students based on the different topics and subjects they're learning in the classroom. So it could be a group of activities that we have in Smile and Learn, such as a video, a story, game that relates to a certain topic, such as learning about additions, learning about the environment, learning about the health. It really depends on what you're teaching. And the learning paths, you can create them, you can assign them to your students using the Teacher Management Portal. The Teacher Management Portal can be accessed using the following web address here shown on my screen, library.smileandlearn.net, or you can access the Teacher Management Portal directly through the Smile and Learn application. So if I use the web-based portal here, I just have to enter in the credentials that you have for Smile and Learn, and you'll be logged in. Or you can go through the application. If you click on Smile and Learn, here you would have your classes. Before you enter any of your classes, you have this option here for settings. If you click on settings, you just have to solve a quick math problem. So there you go. And then you click on Learning Analytics and type in the password. And the same page opens up into a web browser. Because I have the other one open, I'm going to close this one. And as you can see here, this is the Teacher Management Portal. I have my classes. I have different functions that I can do as a teacher. Today we're going to look at learning paths. So this is the blue button on the top left. And here when I select on learning paths, I have three different options. I can create new learning paths. I can create a learning path by copying an existing learning path, or I can edit a learning path. Let's say I wanted to change a title, I want to add content, and I forgot to add something. I can do that here. And then the most important part is to be able to assign the learning paths to your students or remove those assigned learning paths if they're no longer needed. So right now we're going to look at how to create learning paths. So in order to do that, you select here the button for Create. And to create learning paths, there's some information that we have to enter. So we'll start with the name or the title of the learning path. Let's say I'm working on teaching my students about healthy habits. So that's what I'll enter here. You enter a description. Students will learn about healthy habits, for example. Then you follow that by the language. So great thing about Smile and Learn is that our content is available in 6 different languages. And if you are working with bilingual or ESL settings, it's great. You can select the language that you want the children to work in, so they only see the content in that language. So if you're teaching them just Spanish, just English, just French, that's available. So for this example, I'm going to choose English and Spanish. The next option we have is order sequence. Now, this is really important if you are trying to order the content or sequence the content that you want the children to see it in. So for example, if I select open access here, and if I have, let's say, 10 different pieces of content, couple of videos, few games, and you don't care what order the students see that content in, then you can select this option. If you want them to first watch a video and then follow that with an activity, and you have a specific order you want them to see the content, then you would select this option. Okay? And again, this says basically that before they can access the next piece of content, they would have to first complete the first one. So if there's a video, they would first watch the video, and only once they've finished watching the video, they will be able to complete the next activity. So this is a great way to add more structure into the learning experience for the children. So I'm going to select this one so you can see how this looks like when we see it in the platform. And then here I can pick an icon. We have tons of icons to pick from. Let's say, since I'm focusing on health, I'm going to pick an apple. Now here, to actually make the learning path useful, we have to add the content. To add the content, we have thousands of activities, so it can be a lot unless you really know where each of the content pieces are. We also have the search button to help you find it. But let's say within literacy, it's the same appearance that we have here in the platform. So we have the content grouped by the different educational worlds, and you can go within each of these areas and look at the different subtopics within it. So for example, within science, I know that there is a health subtopic, and I can come here and look at the different topics to work on with my students and add the content. So let's say within nutrition, I want them to learn about healthy eating habits, and I want to start that with a video, and then I want to have them maybe design their own menu so they can practice healthy habits. Or I can also use the search button here to look for content. So right next to contents, you'll see this magnifying glass. If I select it, I can search content by academic areas, cognitive skills, key competences, age, intelligence, language learning, type of content. So here I can search, for example, since I'm focused on healthy habits, let's say I want to teach my children how to be healthy when washing their hands. Say washing hands. So good hygiene habits. So here you can see I have some search results, and I have one on hand washing. Let's say if I want more information about this content, I can click on this icon with an I for information. And here I can see for hand washing, this is an activity. So we have videos, we have activities, we have puzzles. So this will tell you this is a puzzle activity, and it's an interactive game to help children practice personal hygiene habits. And all the languages this content's available in, the academic areas it focuses on, the cognitive skills it works on, and the key competences. So I can add this directly from here by clicking on the add button. So I can do that, or I can select on the activity directly from here. So if it's, let's say I want them to also watch a video on hand washing, I can click on the activity here. If I don't want to add it anymore, I can remove it by clicking on it again, or I can remove it by clicking on the X button here. So there are many ways to add the activities or remove them, and you can always learn more about them again by clicking on the information icon available near the activity. And for the videos, we also have a preview button. So if you want to look at the preview of the video they'd be watching, you can always select this and learn more about it. So I've added a couple of activities on hand washing and healthy eating habits, and maybe I want them to also focus on being healthy by learning about the flu, for example. So I'm going to add that, and this is the order that you can see my content has been added in. So maybe I want to move the hand washing video before they do the activity to help them understand healthy habits around there. And so I have a video on healthy eating, then they get to do an activity on designing the menu. Then I have a video on hand washing. Just to check, I can click on the icon. Yep, this is the video. And this is the activity on hand washing. And then I want them to actually do a fun activity about learning about the flu, for example. And once I'm done selecting the content, very important to save your new path. So I'm going to save this. And then I get a confirmation saying that I have saved my path. Now we're going to look at how to copy existing learning paths or edit an existing learning path. So that's with the second option here. So if I click on this edit button, you will see 3 different areas. So here I have the paths that I've created. These are all the paths that I've created. The one I just created was the healthy habits. I can also look at the paths that my school has. I don't have any right now, but if your school has specific learning paths that they want shared across the different classrooms for different teachers, then those would go here. And then there are also Smile and Learn paths, the paths that we have created, the education team has created for you guys. We have them grouped by different areas, whether it's curricular training. We have it by different countries. by multiple intelligences, by STEM content, anything focused on project learning, ESL, special education needs, which is also very important. For bilingual learning, we have created bilingual learning paths under curricular training, USA, and then they have been grouped by the different curriculum standards. So we have the Common Core, NGSS, WIDA, and Head Start learning for early childhood education. So if you select on any of these learning paths, you will see that they have been grouped by different ages or different grades, and you can go in and look at the different learning paths that have been mapped to the curriculum standards. You can only copy these learning paths. You cannot edit them, as these are shared across all teachers that have access to the Smile and Learn portal. But if you would like to, for example, use any of these learning paths, you really just have to go in here. You can copy them, and by copying them, you can add them. You can keep the information as is. So for example, this learning path is called as such reading literature, but if you want to change it to reading comprehension or another description, or change the languages it's available in, you can do that. And then it will automatically be added to your paths, and then you can assign it to your students. And here you can see all the activities that are in this learning path. There are lots of activities. Again, if it's too much, you can just add or remove those activities by clicking on the X button here. You can also add a sequence. This one has open access, so you can add sequential mode and then change the order of the activities by using the hamburger icon here to the left and just shift them up as needed. So that can be done. And when you save it, it gets added to your paths. So if I enter back into here, if you want to edit any of your existing learning paths, so we created the one on healthy habits. If I go on edit, let's say I wanted to add another activity that I forgot to add that I think is really important for healthy habits. Let's say I wanted to do a video or an activity about something more about healthy eating. So I'm going to do healthy eating. I know I added a video and I added an activity, but I'm going to add something about teaching children something about vegetables, for example. So I want to teach my children about eating healthy with vegetables, and I want them to learn about what are vitamins. And I can go ahead and add that, and you can see the order they've been added in. And I'm going to click on update to save the changes I've made. And that's how I have edited and copied a learning path. Now we're going to look at assigning the learning paths or removing those assignments. Now this is very important to do. If we create the learning paths and don't assign them, then students won't be able to see those learning paths. So here under assign or remove paths, I'm going to click on the button. And once you click on the button, you'll see three different areas. You'll see the option here for all the paths that you have. So your paths are the ones that you've created. If I select, for example, healthy habits, here in the middle, I will see all the students that I can assign them to. I can assign them to the entire class. I can assign them student by student. It really depends how you want to assign the content. I can also look at what the content I had in that learning path. It's been, a while since you created it. Oh, okay, this is the order, and this is what the children are going to be interacting with once they open the platform. Great. You can also assign your school paths here. Again, I don't have any, but you can assign the school paths that your school chooses that will be only specific to your school, and only your school will view it. You can also assign any of the Smile and Learn learning paths. Let's say you wanted to do a bilingual learning path for reading, then you can select and add this learning path also. And on the right here, you can see there's a summary of the learning paths that have already been assigned to the students. These are just some of the ones that I've done previously that I wanted to show or I wanted the students to see. You can also see it by student. I can see what Mike has, I can see what Arushi has, I can see what Joseph has, or I can see it by learning paths. So I can change the view here. So let's go ahead and assign the learning path we had created on healthy habits. Let's say I want only select students to see it. I want Allison to see it, I want Shiv to see it, and I want Tanya to see it, for example. Now I can click on the save button and save these learning paths and the assignments of the learning paths, but then they will always be shown to the students. Now, if you want to assign specific dates when these learning paths become visible based on what you're teaching in the classroom, you can click on assign dates. So if I click on that, here I can see my learning path, and I can assign to the students, to all 3 of my students. Let's say I can pick a date. So today's date is the 18th. So I can assign it starting today, and then they will work on this learning path till the end of the week. I can assign it to all students. Let's do that again, till the end of the week. Or I can click on this little person icon here and assign it by student. So I can assign Allison a different week, I can assign Shiv a different week, Tanya a different week. Really depends on what, where they are in their learning journey. Maybe they need extra time. Maybe they have already, maybe they're gonna look at it the week later. Maybe they were out sick, so now they need to do this learning path. You can really customize when they can see this learning path. So it's a pretty cool feature that we have here in Smile and Learn. I'm gonna leave it like this. I wanna assign it to all 3 of the students, and then I'm very important, click save. And here I have a confirmation that my paths have been assigned successfully, and that's it. So now what I'm gonna do is show you how that looks once I've assigned the learning path. So if I go into the platform, I'm gonna go back to my class, and I'm gonna click on grade 3 because those students were in my grade 3 class. So let's start with Allison. If I click on Allison, she has already been assigned different learning paths, and the one that I just assigned her was healthy habits, which is right here. You can see the start date of October 18th till October 21st. Those are her dates that she'll have access to these learning paths. Once we go past this date, this learning path will not show in her list of activities to do. Now, if I click on this learning path, you can see that because I enforced a sequence mode on the learning path, Allison has to do all the activities in the order that I have assigned these activities. So we have a video on healthy eating, then I want her to practice designing her own menu, I want her to watch a video on hand washing, and then she can do the activity and so on. And if I had left it in open sequence, or open mode, then she would have access to all the activities and could do them in whichever order that she wanted. So it depends on how you want your students to view and interact with activities, totally customizable. Okay? Now another thing that's important that I'd like to show you is the ability to remove this button to close out of the learning paths, because right now if I close out of this, Allison can directly enter the platform. Now obviously we're trying to avoid that, right? We understand Allison can enter the platform without finishing all our activities. So how do we restrict that? So to restrict students from accessing the platform before they finish their learning paths, what we'll do is we will add a content constraint. So how we do this is we'll go home, back to the first page, and we'll select the grade in this case because we want to do this for specific students in our classes. We have for Tanya, Allison, and Shiv, and I'll select personalize. And here you can see all the students. I have different checkboxes next to them. I have the option to customize the learning interaction that they will have. One of them is content constraints. So I'm going to select the profiles of the students I want this for. I can also select it for all of my students in the class. It really depends on what you're looking for. I select on content constraints, and here I can schedule the time, the length of time that students cannot can have to work in the learning paths before they enter the platform. So if I add a content constraint for 3 months, they will not be able to close out of the learning paths or enter the platform. And they will have to first finish everything before they can. So here I have the option to add a constraint. And I can do this by selecting the time period. So I have to, if I don't select this option here, then they will never be able to enter the platform at any given time. If you don't want it to be that restrictive, you can select certain dates. So for my learning path, I had chosen this week. So I'm just going to select those same dates. But again, you could have multiple learning paths, 5, 6 learning paths. And you might want to have this restriction up for 3 or 4 months because you first want them to focus on learning with the activities you have chosen for them. So in my example, I'm just going to choose for this week, I'll choose the hours. So I'm going to choose, let's say, the school hours. I'm going to say 9 a.m. till 4 p.m., for example. And then I'm going to choose the days, so the 4 days. And then I click on save. And as you can see that my learning or my content constraint has been added, I can always modify it. I can always change who this rule applies to. I can completely delete the rule. And I can do whatever I need to in case this wasn't the exact content constraint I wanted. Now what we're going to do is go back into the platform. And I'm going to go back out for this change to appear. I'm going to select the grade that I was looking at. Let's say I'm going to start with Allison's profile. As you can see, that button to close out of the learning paths has disappeared. So if I go into the healthy habits again, that option has been removed. So now I have restricted Allison's access to the platform. I want first Allison to work through all the activities here before she can enter into the platform. So again, since there are thousands of activities within Smile and Learn, the real potential of using Smile and Learn in classrooms comes with assigning them different learning paths that focus on the curriculum or the areas of studies that they're working on. And you can add as many more learning paths as you want. You can select the languages you want them to work in. And here you can see the progress that they're making in the learning paths. So now that you've added the different content constraints, the one thing that's left to show you is how to remove those learning path assignments. If I go back to home again and go under learning paths, I also have the option to remove those assignments in case I've assigned them incorrectly or that's not something I want my students to work on. So if I click on this option again, I can go to my paths and let's say the healthy habits that I'd created. I can unselect the students I don't want to work on the learning paths by clicking on their avatars here, or I can also do that on the right side of the screen under summary by selecting it, seeing the view by students, and then for example, I can go under Shiv's profile and remove him like that. Remove him from the assignment like that. So, and then obviously click on save. And now I'm going to go back into the platform and go back into my classroom. For example, Allison is no longer assigned to this learning path, and as you can see, it's been removed from her list. I don't see anything on healthy habits. In this video tutorial, we looked at creating new learning paths, creating a copy of an existing learning path, or editing a learning path, and also assigning the learning paths to students and removing those assignments if needed. I hope this video tutorial was helpful to you. Thank you so much.